Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hi there. I have a great guest for you guys today. I sat down with Karolina Rzadkowolska to talk about her new book, which is being published by HarperCollins, which is no small feat, you guys. It's coming out in January of 2022, and the title of the book is Euphoric: Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. Now, I know Karolina because she is a fellow This Naked Mind certified coach with me, and that's how I met her. And she came on the podcast to tell her own alcohol story and also to talk to us about why she decided to write this book and really to give us a unique, positive perspective on what is available to all of us if we just allow ourselves to take a break from alcohol. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. By way of background, Karolina is also the host of Euphoric the Podcast and the founder of Euphoric Alcohol-Free, and her work has been featured in the Huffington Post, Authority Magazine, Greatist, and Elite Daily. And as I said, she is also a coach. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Karolina. Welcome, Karolina.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so excited to be on the show today.
I'm really excited because you're our first out of our group of certified coaches. You're the first person to be publishing a book about being alcohol-free. And I have had the pleasure of reading the book, which is called Euphoric. I've looked at an advanced copy of it, and I think it's the material that's in there and the approach that you take is so similar to mine that I'm really excited to talk to you about it today. So first of all, congratulations. That's such a big deal.
Thank you so much. And maybe we'll share a little bit deeper, but it's just been a biggest goal of mine to write a book ever since I was a little girl. And I had the worst writer's block when I had a drinking habit. And so, going alcohol-free was not just this freedom from, something that wasn't serving me. It also allowed my biggest dream to come true. So
I think it's amazing. I mean, I was just sharing with you before we started recording that I have published a couple of cookbooks, and those were like accidental for me. So I love hearing stories where people have have achieved a real life goal for themselves. The cookbooks kind of, for me, it's a weird long story, but I ended up doing them, and it wasn't something that I had dreamed about doing for forever. And, it was a good enough experience for me, but I have all these other things that I want to accomplish in my life. Writing a book is not one of them, by the way, even though I'm now taking a writing course for fun. But I have such great respect for people who write as a result, because I've been through that publishing process, albeit in a different context, and it's tough. So, how did you get to a point where you actually put pen to paper and started writing that book?
Yeah. So it was my first year alcohol-free. Basically, I had years and years and years of just these really limiting beliefs about what it would mean to not have alcohol in your life. And basically, I was the type of drinker that made alcohol as small as possible, that I tried to at least, so I reserved it for the weekends and I had all these rules around it. And I was just like, hey, look at me, I'm doing balance, right? Except for every Monday morning, it was like, no, this isn't balance. You don't feel good. You're depressed. You're not having the stamina to face the day. And so when I went alcohol-free, I basically just took a break, and it was very experimental. And when I started regaining all of this energy and this confidence and really this profound sense of happiness, deeper than I'd ever felt before, I was like, oh my gosh, there's something to this. There's something really, really important here. And I knew I wanted to share that message with the world. And the word euphoric actually came to me because that's it's a funny word. Sometimes it's actually used in scientific papers to describe the effects of drugs, right? It's this euphoria, right? And I was like, no, I want to take back that word. I want it to mean the alcohol-free lifestyle. This is me being euphoric. And so I kind of had this inspiration to really share how amazing alcohol-free living can be, and really kind of divide it into like the body, the mind, and the soul in a very holistic sense, and give people also a framework on how to achieve it. So that's kind of the inspiration behind it. But I just wanted to share that message loud and clear. And, with what you do, with what I do, this message is kind of gaining traction in our society, but it's still a very small message in the mainstream kind of health world. Right. And
yeah, totally agree with that. I mean, I've been coaching now for well over 11 years. I started coaching in the area, at least purely in the wellness realm. So I was a natural nutrition specialist, and that's really where I spent the first few years of my practice as a coach. And I've kind of stayed in that. That's my wheelhouse. Do a lot of corporate speaking around wellness, and still work with women around their overall wellness, albeit in the context of burnout. And I, for years and years and years, did not talk about alcohol ever. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One, I was still really attracted to all of the articles out there that suggested that my own relationship with alcohol was 100% healthy and actually, totally fine and normal. So I was looking for that through that confirmation bias, and I was finding it. So I don't even know that I was I definitely wasn't as aware as I am now, but I'm not even sure how aware I was for the first few years of all of the, reasons why alcohol actually wasn't good for me. But also it felt really incongruent with my own alcohol habit, and how I was drinking just felt like something I needed to keep secret, because I had this kind of nagging feeling that had been building over the years that it was not cool that I was out there talking about wellness in the way I was talking about wellness, and not talking about alcohol, and also drinking in the way that I was drinking, which I don't think was that far off from the way that you were drinking, which is kind of where I want to start, because this is gaining traction. We are talking about this topic more. We are talking more about other ways to get support and make a change in your relationship with alcohol, other than kind of the conventional ways that have been historically sort of touted as the solution. Again, I'm never knocking any of those programs. They work for lots of people, but they also don't work for a lot of people. And I've talked on this podcast before about how that becomes a real barrier for entry for people in terms of actually making change. You and I think, come from a similar background with alcohol. And I think the thing I want to see more of, and I know you want to see more of, and this is obviously one of the reasons why you wrote the book, although if I'm speaking for you incorrectly, let me know, is you and I both want to see people looking at their relationship with alcohol and making a change from this perspective of what can I gain here, as opposed to what do I have to give up, and not from this place of like, is this bad enough for me to quit? Am I an alcoholic? Do I have a problem with alcohol? And instead, like, wait a second, hold on now. How is this serving me? And what might be possible for me if this wasn't here? So can we step back before we talk about the book and what's in there? And can you kind of let people know how you got to that point where you did that experiment around alcohol? How long did that take? Did you have the same thing I had, which was like years of trying to moderate and make rules for yourself and figure out a way to, feel okay with the way that you were drinking?
Yeah. Great question. So probably exactly yes. But when I went to first college and grad school, obviously I started drinking as a late teenager. And it was then that I really had just no boundaries around alcohol. I partied a lot. I was, almost every night was going out. I really overdrank then, like probably more than I ever have in my life. Right. And so I kind of almost like could feel like, whoa, this is what heavy drinking looks like, And then as I grew up, I started my career, I got married, I settled down. I was like, okay, well, now I have to be a responsible adult. I started getting really into health and wellness myself. I started doing, yoga and meditating, getting really into mindfulness. And so I considered myself, by the time I was 30, a very healthy and mindful person. I ate like 9 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. I did my green juice. I, again, went to yoga classes, all this stuff. And so basically what I'd done is I took this kind of like party lifestyle that I had when I was younger, and I was like, well, that's only okay on the weekends, So I would go Monday through Wednesday, Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, not drinking. And then I would drink over the weekend. And it was very normal in the sense of like, I was at a dinner party. I was at sushi night. I was at game night. Maybe it was Netflix and wine, which is obviously kind of the thing now too. And so I just tried to make it as small as possible. It was like I compartmentalized it into my life. And I kept trying to find this elusive balance, like you, I was reading these articles of a woman who has it all. She wakes up early and goes to the gym. She does a great job at work. Then she goes to happy hour with her friends and wakes up and does it all over again. And I was like, wait a minute, why isn't this working in my life? Like one thing doesn't fit with the others. And I tried so hard. I honestly thought that there was something wrong with my body to not be able to process alcohol the same way that I thought other people did. Because I would remember going to like a game night. I live in San Diego, so craft beer was kind of a big thing here. And I would have 3 craft beers over the span of a few hours. Someone else had the same. I woke up with the worst headache. I woke up feeling super groggy, just out of it, just also let down that I'm in that state again. And I was like, oh, well, I guess my friend must wake up feeling fine, because otherwise, why wouldn't I hear about it? Like, wouldn't we all be talking about this if we're all going through it? So I really saw a lot of my drinking mirrored like around me in these like normal occasions and places. So I tried to then make as many rules as possible. No more than 2 drinks, no IPAs, no mimosas, no drinking before 7 p.m., just these crazy kind of rules to try to like, maybe if I just got the equation right, then I would feel good. And it was so funny. I remember even having like 1 drink and the next day still feeling not great. And I was like, wait a minute, like if I can't even have 1, what's the point here? And so, it was these years and years of trying to make it as small as possible in my life. And the irony of it is that like a lot of times I broke promises to myself. A lot of times I, set out with an intention to only drink 1 and I drink more. Lots of low self-esteem because I wasn't abiding by a lot of these rules. But sometimes I did, year after year, I drank less than the year before because I was keeping really good track of it. I actually had a spreadsheet where I listed how many drinks I had each week. And every week I was like, oh, if I could only get to that 7, that 7 is like that holy grail of the healthy number. Nope. I was always in the like 10 plus, teens, maybe even 20s if it was a week of vacation or something. And I was like, darn, like, why can't I get this right? And so can you imagine, like, just as I explained that, how tiring it sounds?
Well, it's not that I can just imagine it. I actually lived it and I totally get it. So when you're talking, this totally resonates with me. I didn't have a tracker per se, like Bridget Jones's diary, but I definitely could tell you every week pretty much to the number how many glasses I had each night that week, because I spent about as much mental energy on trying to control it as you did, which is exhausting.
Exhausting, right?
Yeah.
And also what I didn't realize is that this whole lifestyle I had created for myself of all this mental energy being spent on alcohol, and also this like false notion that like I'm only living for the weekend, like Monday through Thursday was just something you had to get by. And then the weekend was when life really started. I was deeply unfulfilled also with my career. So I was not using my creative, spirit to do the things I had really wanted to do on this planet. I completely settled. So I was working a 9 to 5. I obviously couldn't even do anything with my brain other than think about this mental gymnastics game I was playing with alcohol. I wasn't living out any sense of impact or purpose or meaning. And so I think like that was another layer of deep down kind of root cause of like, obviously a bottle of wine at the end of the week was the highlight of my week because I really wasn't feeling fulfilled in anything else I was doing. So again, years and years of this, but I eventually heard of Dry January. And I think what really had me so resistant to changing my relationship with alcohol, aside from just trying to drink less, was the traditional stories we hear. I had read even a few memoirs, like Drinking a Love Story by Caroline Knapp and another book by Pete Hamill, where it's just really, really heavy drinking.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that's like, oh, I can kind of relate to their turmoil around alcohol, but that's not me, and I still believe that someone who quit drinking would have to become an alcoholic overnight, right? And then go to AA meetings for the rest of their lives. So I just kept pushing that away and off. But when I heard of Dry January, it was like the permission I needed. It was like, oh, like normal people do this. And it's like a health thing. Yeah, like I can get on board. now I have an excuse and I don't have to, go around telling people I have a problem. And so I did dry January, and I basically like slowly fell in love with how I was feeling. I was a big reader and I like to journal and be really introspective. And anytime I drank, like the evening was those, you don't read when you're buzzed. At least I don't know anyone who does, but, like it was just the simplest things. Like I was reading more. I was playing board games with my husband more. We're doing kind of like more homely activities. I was sleeping really deeply. I remember playing with my niece, like just being really present with her, And when it came to February, I really, really liked it. I was like, wow, like I could see myself being alcohol free. But then I had this code that I was living by still. And the code says normal adults drink.
Right.
And if you want to be normal, you have to drink. And it was almost like I equate it to like this epiphany you might have, like when you're on vacation and you're like, oh my gosh, life is so short. I should live my everyday like this. I should do what I want. I should be living out my passions. And you have this almost like carpe diem, like seize the day type of attitude. And then you get back from vacation and you go to the job you hate and you slug through it. And you're like, well, this is reality. What was I thinking? I have to pay the bills, right? It was the same kind of like, oh, well, I have to go back,
right.
this kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And when I drank those few times in February, the contrast was so huge. Even just after having like 2 drinks, my mood was so high during dry January. I was appreciative. I felt so much gratitude, so much presence, so much wonder, like just really even appreciating things like trees and clouds around me. Second I had a few drinks, I felt frustrated, cranky, exhausted. Like I was like, whoa, I never noticed it to that depth before of how much alcohol hijacks my moods like that. And I was like, oh my God, drinking sucks. And so I decided to take another break at that point, and I basically haven't looked back. And I kind of solved that deeper sense of unfulfillment, because all of the confidence I got, all of the energy I got, all of the, just excitement of being a new person, basically. I mean, when you don't drink for a while, every day is like a new feat. You're like, whoa, I can go 50 days without alcohol. Like, who is this woman? This is incredible. Right. And that confidence really spilled over into other areas of my life. And so, things like wanting to write a book and wanting to launch a business. Oh, I had long ago shelved as like pipe dreams. Right. And now I was like, you know what, let's take those things off the shelf and let's work on them and let's do them. And I changed my life so drastically in that first year. I launched my business. I wrote the first draft of my book. I ran a half marathon, another thing I didn't believe I could ever do. I launched a podcast. Like I just got out of my comfort zone in all these other different ways. And I've been kind of going after these dreams ever since. And that's really kind of my core message now with women is like, it's not about a drink. Like, I don't care what you drink at the end of the day. It's about being alive to your life and alive to your deeper dreams. And lo and behold, like remove alcohol and that just flourishes. Like it's just something, right? It's not just me. Like look at your life, look at all these other people's lives that we know, our clients. There's something so magical about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really inspirational. I mean, you're quite a bit, let's be honest. You're probably like 20 years younger than me. That's my guess.
I'm 34, so I don't know.
Almost. So you're 16 years younger than me. And you did all of this in your early 30s, right? So
I was 30 years old when I,
yeah. And so I was 46 years old when I stopped drinking. And I think for women listening to this podcast, most of them are going to be more in my age bracket than your age bracket. I just want to say it's not that much different if you're older. So you might be thinking, oh, hold on now. She's young and free and, doesn't have the same responsibilities as I do or this, whatever, making assumptions about your life, Karolina. But I just want to say that is what Karolina just described is not that far off from how it feels for women in midlife who make this change. It may be that we're a little deeper into the unfulfilling life. Certainly in my experience with the women that I work with, that is the case for a lot of them. They've kind of gotten stuck in a set of circumstances that maybe serve them for a period of time, but no longer serve them. And so it can feel like there's more to dig yourself out of, but that feeling of freedom and joy that comes from stacking days and the confidence that comes with that is pretty empowering. And the things that I'm watching women in midlife do as a result of letting go of alcohol or whatever the thing is that they're using too much that doesn't serve them is pretty amazing. So I want to go back to one thing you talked about, because I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast, and we should. I want to talk about the detox to retox cycle, because that is certainly for me, when I look back on it, was a kind of the way I lived my life for a long, long time. So when you're describing your weekends, that's not far off from me. I was probably drinking more during the week than you were in terms of nightly drinking. But it was, by everyone else's account, subjectively did not look like problematic drinking in terms of my weeknight drinking. On the weekends, there was very often a party or two that I would go to where I would drink more. So before we get into retox to detox, can we talk about binge drinking for women? Because this is also something I don't think we talk enough about. So you mentioned this 7 drinks a week minimum, maximum guideline for women. We were not going to have time today in this podcast to get into all the research around this, but one thing we know for sure is that it is that maximum. I'm putting recommended in air quotes here, because that maximum number for women is really the top maximum and is not in fact being recommended anymore. So it's not like this is a recommended. There are, any research that you've read out there that suggests that alcohol actually helps with heart health or any of these other benefits has been far outweighed by far more credible research that indicates that the health risks of drinking are way more significant. So the 7 drink a week thing is what I hear a lot of women talking about. And it's kind of funny how I don't ask this anymore, but before I was, specifically coaching around alcohol, one of the questions on my wellness intake form was, how many drinks a week do you have? Like clockwork. It was 7, right? Because women knew that was the number, that was like the safe number, again, in air quotes. And so that was what they put down. Now I have learned that I've learned through the work that I do, but also just through like talking to doctors and various other people who are supporting women, it's always underestimated. But what we're not talking about is binge drinking. So there are additional risks involved in the type of drinking that you were doing and the type of drinking that I was doing. And so many women are doing, which is when we are drinking 4 drinks or more in a sitting, right?
Yeah. I mean, even like to make the number even scarier, like the CDC says 2 drinks or more is heavy risking drinking.
Right.
And I remember like, okay, a Friday night of 2 drinks, like I would have been, oh my God, I'm proud of myself. What a great Friday. I did it.
Oh my God, me too. I would have been like, oh no, I didn't even drink, I'm sure. So, But I really think it's important that we get a handle on these numbers, because we are being misled. I mean, I've told the story on the podcast of going into a doctor's office one time, and I swear that the chart on the wall said it was okay to have 2 drinks a day as a woman, which meant 14 drinks a week. And I remember like being so excited about this chart, because up until this point, I've been really stuck on this 7 drink limit a week, which of course I was like blowing every single week. So we get really caught up in the number of drinks that are actually okay. And the truth is, the research now is, and also a lot of these, like you said, the CDC and the cancer societies in Canada, and as well as in the US, are now starting to say like, no, there is no real safe level of intake for alcohol. And in fact, as little as 2 drinks a week increase your risk of breast cancer by 15%. And we know that that risk just goes up the more drinks you drink a week. But the whole binge drinking thing is something that I don't think we talk about very much. So women will save their drinks up for the weekend. I hear that a lot, right? Like, which is presumably what you were doing in your head. I certainly was. But then what happens is, not only are we drinking over the 7 drinks a week, we're also drinking too many drinks at once, which is even more dangerous in terms of drinking patterns. So I think I just went off on a tangent there, which is what I do on this podcast. But I think that that's an important point to make. And that is leading me into the detox to retox cycle. Tell people what that is, because I was doing that. I was the master of that.
Yeah. So, detox to retox. So detox is an idea, obviously, we have in health circles, where you eat clean and you treat your body right and you work out and you do really well, and you're slowly cleansing your cells and your body of any toxins and fat or whatever it is, and at that moment. And so that's kind of this like healthy lifestyle, is like when we put our best foot forward, it's like that detox phase of it. Right. And then retox is like bringing in all of those toxins back into your body to begin with, So it's like you cleaned it and then you brought all of that stuff back into it. And, as you said, with the new, most comprehensive studies that there really is no safe amount of alcohol. I mean, sometimes we forget that like the ethanol in the alcohol we drink is the same thing that's in our gas tank. And it's the same thing in rocket fuel. And it's the same thing in paint thinner. Like it takes our body a huge toll to detoxify that, right? And it really does threaten every single organ in our body and like down to our cells on a molecular level, And so this detoxing, like, and honestly, I think I wasn't drinking a week and then I saved my drinks for the weekend. I always I never let that tolerance really build for me. I mean, I did maybe when I was younger, right? But like the first night I drank after not drinking for a few days, always like my head hurt so badly the next day. Like it really was a shock to my system. And then it kind of got better over the weekend, more drinks, right? But then on Monday, it all came cascading and hit me. And I was not only feeling like obviously the physical effects. I mean, we all understand that, but it was such an emotional low state. And Wendy, I always thought of myself as a really positive person. I did not relate to words like depression, anxiety. I was just a really positive person. And so when I was feeling this low, when I was feeling that like disappointed in myself, just really sad, I also didn't share that with anyone because I didn't it was my kind of identity to be that type of a person. And so really understanding kind of the neuroscience as well of how alcohol affects the brain was such a huge eye-opening experience for me because I was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't just me, right? It wasn't just something wrong with my brain or my body. Like all the research I had to do in my book really showed that you introduce this chemical cocktail of alcohol into your brain. It lowers all the good neurotransmitters that you're supposed to have over time. And then it heightens all the stress ones up. Right. Mm-hmm. And so by Monday morning, I wasn't even feeling like myself. And it's kind of true because it's like alcohol hijacked the neurochemical chemistry of my brain. And I think that was what was kind of the most painful of the detox to retox cycle was the mental aspect of it, the mental health aspect of it, because it's like you take 4 steps forward and then it always felt like I took 6 steps backward. And so it was like, honestly, it's like insanity. You know what I mean? And what's really interesting about it is that researchers have found, like, at least with working out, more that people work out, some people drink more. So there's this correlation with working out and being healthy with drinking more. And that's the thing is because it's like, it's almost like, oh, I've been so good. I've been so good all week. Yeah. I deserve this treat. And so they really kind of go hand in hand. And, personally, I also work with very health conscious women, very holistic minded women. And this is the one big fat incongruency in their life. Yeah. And that's why it sometimes is so painful is that like, when you're living your life out of alignment with your values, like you say you value health and you wake up with a headache the next day, you say you value, connection and you're using like a drink to artificially bond with people. You say you value like integrity and yet you never abide by your rules, or the intentions you have for yourself. It really wears on you. And so the drinking doesn't even have to be, like you said, that very much or severely problematic in any way. It's just taking us so much further away from the person we want to be.
Yeah. So for some women, this can become really problematic. And I think, there'll be lots of people listening to this podcast for whom it won't feel problematic to them. And I always say, great. But for those of you, if you are listening to this and this is kind of resonating with you and you're thinking, I've found myself thinking that. I mean, this is where I found myself, this like place of doing all these other things. I had basically fixed all the other pieces of my life that I felt were not where I wanted them to be, starting with changing my career, and, which was a massive thing for me to do, and going back to school and spending more time with my kids and creating this balance in terms of my work hours and my home life and changing the way I ate, which led to me writing these cookbooks and teaching everybody else how to eat and exercising and running, half marathons and marathons and doing all of these things, but doing exactly what you just talked about, which is drinking because I felt like, because I was doing all of these other things, there was like space for drinking there. So that was like, I was balancing out the drinking with the stuff. And I hear this all the time with women that I work with, like who, again, most of them are extremely health conscious, and they'll only drink on the nights where they went to the gym in the morning, or it'll be a reward for them. I mean, it's everywhere, as you know. I mean, I ran the San Francisco full women's marathon, which was in support of leukemia and lymphoma, the entire race. And I was running with Team in Training, which is a organization that raises funds for leukemia and lymphoma. And we ran that, all women, and we crossed the finish line, and it was an amazing fun race. And we got over the finish line and got on a bus, went home, and went to a party and drank. And we drink at, there often is beer at the end of a finish line. And so we've been sold this idea that we can balance this out, and it's not a problem from a health perspective if we're doing these other healthy activities. But at some point, for many of us, you and me included, it just doesn't ring true anymore. And it starts to feel really wrong. And for me, it started to feel really wrong. I was also very concerned about cancer. And I started doing research around cancer, which is something you talk about in the book, because I have a very strong family history of not breast cancer, but of colon cancer. And the research around drinking and colon cancer is not great. It's not great with any cancer, but with colon cancer, I thought, okay, wait a second, this doesn't feel good to me. I'm doing all these other things to try to reduce my risk, but I'm still drinking. And I started to develop incredible anxiety around that. I loved what you were talking about in terms of that, how you feel at the end of the weekend thing. That's something that I hear all the time from women, this like real anxiety come Monday as a result of drinking on the weekend, which then that anxiety leads to them setting stricter rules for themselves for the first 4 days of the week again. But then always come Thursday or Friday, they're drinking again. They're feeling that pull. So I think that's a really typical cycle for women. So the book is divided into sections, which I love. And you talk about all kinds of topics that I have talked about before on this podcast, that I think are the really important benefits of not drinking that we don't think very much about or talk very much about. And again, I love the fact that you've set this up. Really, it's not a here are all the terrible things about alcohol book. It's a here are all the amazing things that can come from just giving yourself permission to not drink. And it's totally okay to not drink, whether you are, someone who considers themselves to have a real problem with alcohol or not. One of the things that you talk about is sleep. Tell me how your sleep improved as a result of not drinking anymore.
Oh my gosh. So I think I was 25 when I noticed that one glass of wine like ruined my sleep. And I was just like, like when you're much younger in college and whatnot, like these just seem to bounce back as I remember my memories, and it was like the two wine you used to bounce back from. And then as you age, it like really kind of takes a toll on you, which is a very normal process. Right. But really like the science that they've discovered on alcohol and sleep is just, it was so relieving to me yet again, because here was another effect I was experiencing where I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one experiencing, or else why aren't we talking about this as a society? And so alcohol, not only does it, what happens is it's a depressive, it's a depressant kind of substance, but our body has this natural system to kind of counteract that. So our body will release stress hormones in response to alcohol. So our body releases cortisol, adrenaline, and dynorphin, which is like to say kind of like the opposite of endorphins. And so we usually feel those effects 5 hours after drinking. And so I don't know about you, but sometimes I'd calculate it. Like I might go to bed at 11 p.m., after a night of drinking. And then 5 like round hours later, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I wake up with this startling anxiety, and then after that, my sleep's completely fragmented. And so that's kind of what's at play there. And that can often happen. I've heard people with the constant wake up calls or just the really light sleep in the early morning hours is super, super common. But in addition to that, alcohol also will reduce the amount of REM sleep cycles you have in a given night. So we usually have around 5 to 6. And basically our REM cycles, our entire sleep cycle, first we're in slow wave sleep, and then we transition to REM sleep. Those last about 90 minutes and we repeat them through the night. So alcohol is really good at putting you in slow wave sleep. That's why some people even think it helps them fall asleep, because it's really sedating them to sleep and it puts them straight into that slow wave sleep. But, most people who think alcohol helps them sleep, it's just the first half of the night you might actually be, asleep. And then you have that fragmented wake up calls in the morning or early night, late night. So with the REM sleep cycles, even one glass of wine has been proven to reduce them from around 5 to 6 to just one REM sleep cycle.
Right.
So your brain isn't getting that REM needs. And we still have a lot to learn. I'm not a neuroscientist by any means, but even neuroscientists themselves still have a lot to learn on the effects of REM sleep on the brain. But we do know that it helps process memories, that it helps us process emotions as well. And they've restricted rats from getting REM sleep, and they all died within like 3 weeks. It's really important. So what ends up happening is even if you drink like, the 1 to 2 glasses, the innocent amount, your body and brain isn't getting that sleep it needs. And so when that happens, like you could be clocking in the full 8 hours, and I was a zealot when it came to my sleep. Like I had gotten to that point in my life where I couldn't just like sleep it off. Like I needed many hours to feel deeply rested. I like would use a pillow, a special pillow, a mask, like a fan. And, I got so upset when I woke up feeling like I was still exhausted or that I still wasn't feeling well. Mm-hmm. And so, just one glass of alcohol was ruining all of that REM sleep for me. And the interesting thing is that 1 hour of that sleep lost, it actually takes your body 4 days to recover from that. So every weekend, and, my whole like kind of game plan was like, okay, I'll take it easy during the week. I'll recoup, I'll get healthy, I'll detox, like you said. And then I kind of overdid it on the weekend. Like my body was never getting to a place where it was actually capturing all of that lost sleep. Yeah. And I felt it, I felt exhausted. I always was at war with my alarm clock. Like I hated waking up before 9 a.m. I had to get to work way before that, but like, I hated that. And my sleep just rebalanced so well, when I took my break from alcohol. That's, I think, one of the most obvious benefits that people can receive. Now that I've worked with so many women, it can be really unique to each woman's situation, the time it takes. So some women find even just after 5 days, they're sleeping a lot better. Some women find it takes 3 to 4 weeks. So, everyone's kind of rebalancing from different habits. Yeah. But when you do rebalance, your circadian rhythms change. You're not having all those stress hormones your body's reacting to, and you can really get the deepest sleep you've ever gotten. It takes me like 5 minutes to fall asleep these days, and I never wake up in the night. Like it's insane.
Right. So I will throw this out there because you are 34 and I am 50. This changes for women, and we talk a lot about this on the podcast. However, your quality of sleep changes as part of like when you're going through shifting hormones through perimenopause and into menopause. So, however, this is just one more reason to take a look at your alcohol consumption, because if you're already struggling, so if you're someone who's struggling with their sleep, which I know is probably 50% of the women who listen to this podcast do not have the same sleep that they had when they were in their 30s. If this is you and you're still drinking, I've said this before on this podcast, just experiment with not drinking for a while, just see, because, you're already being shortchanged in terms of the quality and depth of your sleep as a result of those hormonal disruptions that are at play. And alcohol is just one more thing that's making that challenging for you. And we have discussed in other episodes on this podcast, the link between alcohol and vasodilation. So it's a vasodilator, which means it will contribute to hot flashes and night sweats. So if that's one of the reasons why you're waking up, it's another reason to take a look at the alcohol and just experiment. Just try it for a week. What happens if I don't drink for a week? Does that impact the quality of my sleep? However, as Karolina said, it can take longer than that for women to level out with this. It really is an individual thing. This is the reason I wanted to talk about sleep, Karolina, is because so many people listening to this podcast struggle with it. And this is, to me, it's like the low hanging fruit, around sleep, is to actually take a look at this. And I was absolutely one of those people who thought alcohol helped me to sleep. And it did. It helped me get to sleep. But what we don't realize is the impact that it's having on the quality of our sleep. And sleep deprivation, if you're listening to this, sleep deprivation has a million different not so great consequences. One of them is that you will produce more of the hormone that tells you you're hungry and less of the hormone that tells you you're satisfied. So if you're also trying to manage your weight, which is, again, probably 50% of the people listening to this podcast are struggling with some of the weight gain that often happens in your 40s, one of the best things you can do is start working on your sleep, and removing alcohol is a really great way to do that, because you can only imagine what happens if your body's telling you every day that you're hungrier than you were the day before. And also that it takes more food to actually have you feeling satisfied. So I love that. I think that's such a great, it's just a really relatable, positive change that happens for just about everybody, which is why I wanted to spend a little bit of time on it. I also want to talk about the patriarchy though. So I always ask guests if they have questions that they suggest, I ask them about. And so I basically ignored all of the ones you sent me, Karolina. I apologize for that, but that's because you and I know all of this stuff, and you and I talk about this in other contexts. And I've talked about a lot of these things on the podcast before, but what we do like to do here is we do like on this podcast to, give it to the patriarchy every once in a while. And there was one question on there and I thought, I have to ask this. So I'm going to ask it right from the question sheet from your publicist. What role do you believe the patriarchy has played in the alcohol industry? And how is the relationship of women with alcohol different than that of men?
Yeah. Such a good question. And we've gotten so much theory and just so much evidence on how much unpaid work women do in proportion to men, right? So women do like 4 hours of unpaid work every day compared to men. So women work more. And then obviously we know we're also paid less. So for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 77 cents, much lower if you're a woman of color. Also, in addition to that, let's talk about wealth for a second. For every dollar a man owns, he owns 32 cents. And then what the alcohol industry basically did, and this is kind of a recent phenomenon in the last maybe 20 years or so, is it positioned alcohol as this solution to your stress, especially for mothers. It comes in and we have all of this advertising, all of this different kind of shift in the language of how we talk about alcohol as this self-care, as this glass of wine you have after a long day of work, as this mommy juice you need to drink, to take care of your kids. All of this kind of change. And also that women deserve to drink just as much as men, kind of feminization of it. There's all these companies now that, make light drinks, pink drinks, all this kind of stuff. And they literally are preying upon the fact that women are overstressed, and they're offering alcohol as a solution. You know what a woman who is dealing with all that truly needs? We need so much more value placed on our work. We need connection, with other women. We need support. We need worth to matter. We need so many different things, and it's not found in a fermented beverage in a wine glass, right? It's almost trite to me to suggest that the solution to women's problems is found in a wine glass. The alcohol industry gets away with that message all the time.
Sorry, just to interrupt. I think that the piece that needs to be stated, although it's fairly obvious, is that the alcohol industry is run by the patriarchy. So this is an old established industry that has been around for a very long time, that had been primarily marketing to men for a very, very long time, and then realized at a certain point in time that there was this whole segment of the market that they were missing out on, and then capitalized on exactly what Karolina is talking about here, which is the fact that women are working more and completely exhausted and burnt out. So it's pretty reprehensible. It really makes me angry, but they are getting away with it. And so yes. I think it's worth talking about. I've talked about this so many times on this podcast, Karolina. I've come at this different ways. I've had our colleague, Emily Lynn Paulson, on here a couple of times. We've talked, she's the queen of mommy wine culture. And we've talked about this before, but I always want to raise it again, because I think, the only way to change this is for us to start saying this is not cool. And to actually start calling the industry out on this, and to stop sharing these really harmful posts, because it's not just happening through, commercial media. It's also happening through social media. It's happening all the time. Okay. So we've just talked about a couple of the things that are in the book, Euphoric. There's so much more in there, you guys. It's a really great book. If you like the way I talk about alcohol, you're going to like Euphoric. It's a really approachable, accessible book. And if you're someone who is just questioning their relationship with alcohol, starting to think, I don't know, I feel like I'm drinking too much, I don't like this, or you're in that, detox to retox cycle that we've been talking about, I think you're really going to love this book. So Karolina, can you tell everybody first of all, when's it coming out, and how can people find it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So the book's called Euphoric: Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. There it is. And it comes out January 4th of 2022, which is coming up right now. And we're in pre-order mode. So right now, while the book's not available yet, you can pre-order the book. And we also have a lot of different bonuses that come with that when you pre-order. So if you check out euphoricbook.com and you pre-order the book, you'll get like a checklist of 50 things to do instead of drinking, to really combat that boredom and that new ritual time that you have in the evening. We have trainings on changing some of the mindset around alcohol to really come to lose your desires for it. We also have like mocktail recipe books and all that kind of stuff. So all of it comes your way if you pre-order the book at euphoricbook.com. And you can get it basically at any retailer. It's even going to be in Target, physically in Target come January. So I'm really excited about that.
That's so exciting. Yeah. It's bringing me back to when my books came out. I remember being so excited about the books coming out and the book launch, and it's such an exciting time for you. So I wish you the best of luck with this. And again, I encourage anyone who's listening, who's just wanting to explore their relationship more. The most beautiful thing about this book and the approach that Karolina and I both use as coaches is that you get to focus on all of the things that it's giving you. And it takes you out of that place that you've probably been before. If you're like us and you've been trying to moderate for a long period of time, make rules for yourself, it gets you out of that feeling that you're just white knuckling your way through this and you're missing out on all of this really great stuff by not drinking. Instead, it focuses in on all of the amazing things that you stand to gain as a result of drinking less. And I just want to reiterate that you don't need to stop drinking. You don't need to make a commitment to give up alcohol for the rest of your life. A great place to start is to start with an experiment. So just give yourself the gift of taking a week or two off alcohol and just pay attention to the difference that makes. And I think what you'll see if you pick up Euphoric is that you start to notice a lot of these things that Karolina talks about in this book. So, well, listen, I'm going to be following this. I think it's fantastic. Good for you for getting alcohol out of your life and really getting out of your own way with all of this and accomplishing something that's been a dream of yours for a long time. I think it's amazing. Good for you.
Thank you so much. And I have to say it's a direct correlation of that. And I'm not alone, like a lot of my clients have gone on to rediscover their deeper dreams from childhood or the ones that they were even too scared to name all their life, and I've had clients myself who have written books now, who have launched businesses, I have one client who quit her corporate job and moved her entire family to France. And now they're having the adventure of their lifetime. And that's like why I care about this topic so much, because it's so much bigger than just what's in your glass. Like can affect every area of your life. Taking a break will, that's what I mean. I hate the scare tactics as well. Like you said, it's really more focusing on what you stand to gain. And there's just so many benefits unfolding for you. And you don't risk anything by trying it.
Yeah, I totally agree. My favorite question right now is, what is unfinished? That's my favorite coaching questions. Like, what is unfinished in your life? So have a think about that. What's unfinished in your life? And how might it impact your ability to actually do the things that you haven't done yet? If you get this one thing out of your way that's keeping you so stuck. Like when I think about the amount of mental energy and time that was consumed by this habit that wasn't even serving me, it's no wonder to me that I have been able to do the things that I've been able to do since I stopped drinking. And obviously it's the same with you, Karolina. So with that, I will see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us on Bite Size Balance today. Bye, Karolina.
Bye. Thank you.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a certified Naked Mind coach, I help busy women like you find freedom from alcohol. If you're starting to question your relationship with alcohol, you'll want to listen to my free 3-part video series where I address the top 3 myths around why you think you need to drink. Sign up now at www.wendymccallum.com/myths. That's www.wendymccallum.com/myths.